My name is Fiona Colson and I'm the Dean of the School of Medical and Applied Sciences here at CQ University, and I'm delighted to welcome so many delegates from across Australia and to our perfect winter weather in Dirrumbal country in central Queensland. I would like to acknowledge the elders past, present and future of the Dirrumbal people, for they do hold the hopes, traditions and memories of this land. As the Dean of the School of Medical and Applied Sciences, I'm very delighted to be introducing the keynote speaker this morning, Ms Kylie Hicking. She is the Director of Commercialisation with the Department of Science, Information Technology and Innovation. Kylie designs and delivers a number of programs under the Advanced Queensland Business Investment and Attraction Initiative, and her role supports and encourages collaboration between research, business and industry and government sectors to improve commercialisation rates and start-up formation. And our Chief Scientist highlighted the importance of that in his presentation earlier. Kylie has experience in a number of government roles, both in education and community services, and prior to joining the Queensland Government, she worked at the Gartner Group in Australia. Kylie today is going to present her report findings, business and innovation insights in how the newly established Advanced Queensland programs are designed to solve global challenges, to seize opportunities in growing markets and to attract investment dollars and create the jobs of the future. Not a small task at all, but to learn more of a piece of the puzzle for creating a clever, created and connected Queensland, please join me in welcoming Kylie. Thanks, Kylie.
Thanks for the introduction. I'd just like to start with a little bit of audience participation, just so I know who I'm talking to in the room. So hands up if you're a researcher that's in this audience. Okay. And what about those who are a business? Do we have some business people here? Okay. And government? Okay. All right. So more researchers, a little bit of business and a little bit of government. Okay. All right, so the wonderful thing about the Advanced Queensland programs are that they're designed to bring all of those people together. So we're trying to bring together the researchers who create the ideas with the entrepreneurs who accelerate those ideas into marketplaces, and the government around a partnership with those people, essentially, is what it's about. So to start off with, we did my area, commercialisation. We, as Lisa said, we work with researchers and technology startups and entrepreneurs in advancing their efforts to commercialise more Queensland ideas and get them out into global marketplaces. So as part of that work, we did a small piece of research here and throughout the regions in Queensland. We went to each of the regional areas and we asked to map the startup tech entrepreneurs that are in that region. So we did a little bit of work on that, which I've been asked to present to you today. So the beginning of my presentation will just be about that. So in the regions, we had 83 startups that we were able to find. That's not the definitive number, that's just the only ones that we could find. And those 83 startups are employing around about 450 people, and there's about 150 founders in amongst those. So around about 2 each, founders and jobs. Well, I'm terrible at maths, but 3 or 4 people in each startup. In Rockhampton, our figures showed that we have 7 startups here. That's 7 high-tech, globally focused technology companies, early stage. And the key things that they talked about as being their top 5 issues to growth in this region was around talent and skills, access to talent and skills. So that's graduates coming out of universities with an IT interest. Collaboration and networking opportunities. 7 of them here. They want to grow that number. And there's not a lot of others like-minded individuals that they can find to network with easily. Funding. Now this area is not alone. Even people in Brisbane talk about the lack of access to capital. And infrastructure. There wasn't a set place for them to go to grow and build their business from the ground up in teams of 2, 3 or 4. And the profile. Not many people know about the startups here in Rockhampton or the entrepreneurs here in Rockhampton and what they're doing. So to address that, we had the Advanced Queensland Summit. I believe Jeff talked about that earlier in Brisbane recently, and we invited regional delegations to come to that event. We had a couple from Rockhampton come down, a lot from Bundaberg and Mackay as well. So from this region, there was quite good representation at that event. And there were 1,700 delegates there, quite a number of investors, and people from about 17 different countries came to that event. So we're slowly working on raising the profile of our regions. This is just about startup density and the startup workforce and co-working spaces that are around the regions. So in Rockhampton, it's pretty much it's got quite a high density. Cairns was the highest, but Rockhampton's probably the second highest from that chart. So that means you've got one startup for every 12 people, basically, which doesn't equate to 7 startups, but that's the kind of data that they're talking about here. The Advanced Queensland budget announcements. So we started with $180 million from the Queensland Government. That's now, just last week, been bolstered to 405 overall. That's the investment the Queensland Government is making in the state to commercialise our research ideas and our business ideas and get them out into the global marketplace. We're doing that through a number of programs. And in the budget, the ones that would be specifically of interest to this region would probably be the Industry Accelerators Program, which has a $9 million budget, the Regional Innovation Hubs, which has a $6 million budget, and the third one, sorry, not on that slide, it might be on the next one. No, it's not. Sorry. Oh, the Platform Technologies, sorry. Platform Technologies has a $10 million budget. So Platform Technologies is about the drones, virtual reality, robotics, Internet of Things, and augmented reality. Those are platform technologies. So what we're doing with the Platform Technology Program, which is in design at the moment, and we'll do some co-design sessions around that, is we're looking for leaders within that space that can bring all those technology experts together and have a look at the way those technologies are going to disrupt our existing industries, and how do we help to facilitate that disruption so that it's not so disruptive, basically, so that those industries can grow and learn from those technologies and actually implement them into their businesses and into their supply chains to make them far more productive and to make them more relevant in the new world economy. So the Platform Technologies Program is going to be interesting statewide, and it will have an impact on all of our four-pillar industries, from mining to tourism to agriculture and sorry, I've just got off a plane and I'm sort of forgetting things that I'm talking about. But anyway, the four pillar industries. So what we've got now is, I'll go through the actual programs that we're delivering right now. So we have this program called Hot Desk. This was part of the original $180 million. This is an $8 million program, and what we're doing with this is we are importing experts in their field from startup communities from around the world to come here and to start another startup project here in Queensland. And they will be hosted in entrepreneurial hotspots and innovation hubs throughout the state, from the Gold Coast to Cairns, out to Toowoomba and places like Rockhampton in future. We've opened the program with round one. We have about 60 applicants already coming through the system from countries like the US, the UK, South America and Asia. And those people will be placed into some of our existing accelerator and innovation hubs around the state. For round two, we'll be inviting other areas to put in submissions to be part of that program as a host organisation for those teams, and you may well see some of those teams come here to Rockhampton. So the first of our applicants has actually been approved for this program. They got a place through a competition at TechCrunch in New York, which is a large technology conference, and they're called Time Looper. And they have an application that's mobile and virtual reality sort of coming together. And basically what they do is when you go to a tourist location like the Tower of London, where they actually have a test site, when you go there, you put on a headset and you're actually transported back in time, and you can see what happened there, and you can actually be in the middle of it. So you can actually turn around and look, and it feels like you're in the middle of whatever that scene was back in history. It's quite amazing. On their website, they have one with New York Times Square when the war ended, and it's really quite amazing, the technology. So they're coming here to Queensland. They're going to be located at the Creative Industries Incubator in Kelvin Grove, because it requires a lot of film and photography and virtual reality sort of technology. But yeah, they'll be building their business from there and launching it into Asia from here, which is a fantastic outcome for us. The Business Development Fund. This is a $40 million investment fund. The Queensland Government is investing with our angel investors and our venture capitalists through this fund. So essentially, if you have a great idea and you've got an investor who would like to invest with you, this program helps to de-risk their investment for them. We're investing on the same terms as the investor under this program. So we're taking an equity stake, but the investor can buy us out at any time for a bond rate, essentially. So this is about Queenslanders investing in our startups and our research and our entrepreneurs. We've had 2 announcements on this one. The first one was Tritium. Do many of you know who Tritium is? With their energy storage. Okay, and the other one, which was announced yesterday, is Jezzy, which is a journey management platform, and they're in Townsville. Tritium came out of University of Queensland, in fact, and went through the iLab program there. So it invests between $125,000 to $2.5 million. So it's not large investments, but at the top end of that, it's getting up there. And basically that money can help people take that project. So the Tritium people can now take their project with some investment behind them, because they don't just get our $2 million, they get $4 million, because their investor is investing $2 million, we're investing $2 million, and that's going to help them to really build out their business and take it really global. The next program, Ignite Ideas. This is a great program for early stage research and ideas. If you have a minimum viable product or a working prototype, or for those in the medical research field, if you've got an identified target, you can apply to this fund to provide you with up to $250,000 to help you get to the next stage of commercialisation. So what that is, but to get the funds, you have to demonstrate to us that you have something that is of demand, that's meeting a need. So you need to come to the fund with an application that includes a letter from a customer or an investor saying that they're interested in the product or they're using the product, and you have to have that minimum viable product, working prototype, or your identified target to get that funding. We've had our first round closed in April, and we were inundated with over 354 applications for that, and we are still going through the assessment of those applications. So our first stage is basically looking at the eligibility, whether they've ticked all the right boxes and they've attached all the right documents, and then it goes out to an external assessment panel to make the final decisions, recommendations for funding on those. So it's a 3-year program with $10 million. So yeah, round 2 opens next Monday. And if you've got a great idea or a good piece of research, I suggest you have a look at it at least and check out the guidelines and so on, and see if it's relevant for you to apply. The Ignite Ideas Accelerator program. So this is a $9 million program that was announced in the budget last week. Essentially what this is we're saying to industries that you need to pick up your game and that you need to be focused on innovation. So this is about pushing innovation into our industries. Through this accelerator program, we'll see researchers and entrepreneurs coming together to work on industry problems. These are collaborative programs, as I said in the beginning, they're all collaborative, so they involve different parties. So you need to have, if you're interested in this, in running an industry accelerator for a specific industry, be that METS or agriculture or tourism or health devices, then you need to have partners from those industries to establish under this program. So we've started with, we had an expression of interest that went out, and we're now at the second stage of procurement with that. So we'll be announcing those industry accelerators shortly. And it's expected that that $9 million is obviously leveraged by the partners that come to that program with the applications. This is a, these are small funds, these ones. And so the Startup Events and Activities Fund, this is for our early stage entrepreneurs, technology entrepreneurs. The community that supports them are the people that apply for this fund. So this is for running events. Universities can apply, schools can apply, and accelerators and incubators and innovation hubs can apply for this funding. Small amounts of money to help run events and activities, exactly what it's labelled, funnily enough. So if you're wanting to do some workshops or to get a big name person to come and visit and talk to a group of people in that entrepreneurial sort of innovation space, this is a fund to apply for. It does require matched funding. For the Young Starters Fund, this is really focused on the high school. So this is 15 to 24-year-olds. So, thank you, Crow. So this one here is for same thing, events and activities, workshops and inspirational speakers for the younger generations. So I think I'm safe to say that I'm not alone looking around this room. So yeah, the 15 to 24-year-olds. So if you want to run competitions, or you want to run a startup weekend, or you want to run an innovation weekend or activity or boot camp, this is the fund to apply for. A lower level of matched funding, because we really want to see more youth engaged in this space. And the next one is the Startup Precinct. The Startup Precinct will be located in Brisbane, but it will have links into all of our regions, both digitally and physically. So it will provide a universal passport system. So if you're an entrepreneur in Rockhampton with a great idea and you need to be connected to people in Brisbane, it will provide some hot desking ability down there with the universal passport. So you could go down and work in a co-working space in Brisbane while you're having meetings. You can host meetings in the meeting rooms, etc., etc. But essentially what that precinct will do, it'll coalesce all of our activity around around southeast Queensland and then out into the regions. So this will be the place that will tell us what we've got going on in the commercialisation space around the state. That's the vision. So in that space we will have some co-working spaces, some accelerator programs, some platform technology programs, we'll have some industry accelerators in there, and we will also have some investors and the startups and the entrepreneurs and the researchers in that space. So the anchor tenants at this stage, we've got CSIRO going in there and also our Queensland Health digital area. We've also got River City Labs, who's one of the biggest accelerators in Queensland. And we also have a robotics company looking at doing a proof of concept project there as well. So it's fairly exciting, and it'll be big, but it's a lot of work for us to draw in all the regional connections and so on into that space, and we'll be looking for people in the regions to help us do that as well. Chief Entrepreneur. We have our Chief Scientist. The state will be getting a Chief Entrepreneur. So the Chief Entrepreneur will be a temporary role. It's just sort of like a ramping up sort of program. So only for 2 years. That's the time we're giving it to succeed or fail, basically. This is something new for us to do. So we're asking a person who is entrepreneurial mindset, perhaps with a research background or an investor background, to come and help all of our businesses throughout this state to be more entrepreneurial and our researchers to be more entrepreneurial. And that person will also be helping them to reach out to international destinations and to bring international interest here. So essentially, in a nutshell, that's what that program is about. It's giving us a figurehead who can promote us and also connect us. Yeah. I'm not sure. There's been a shortlist put forward and the announcement's due to take place shortly. But yeah, so we've worked on the program design for it. The shortlist has been selected through various people in the system, and it's gone up to the Minister's office, and I guess the announcement will be made shortly. Yeah. Well, I hope it will be announced shortly. The regional innovation hubs. Okay, so this is a $6 million program, and again, we're hoping for regional players to co-invest in this with us, and also for both time and cash, obviously. So this will be an opportunity for the regions, including Rockhampton, to put a bid in to have a regional innovation hub here. This isn't just about a place or a building. This is about creating that ecosystem. So it might be about existing spaces that perhaps need a person to coordinate, or it might be about a place, a coordinator, and some program delivery. This will be something that we will come back here in for a workshop with the region to talk about how we make this happen here and what is going to be the best model for this area if they were to put in a bid. We have funding. The funding will be basically, we're looking at 10 regions out of that and over 3 years. So it's around about maximum of about 200,000 from government per year for 3 years into one region is essentially what we're looking at the moment. There will be a discussion paper that comes out shortly on that, and if you're interested in being involved, please let me know, and we can help connect you into that process. The Global Partnerships Awards. So under this program, this is where we're reaching out across the globe and finding some real sparks out there that can help us here in Queensland. So Johnson & Johnson is one of our partners. It's not under this program, but some of the work they're doing comes under this program. So it focuses on inbound insights, where we're bringing in international expertise to Queensland. Outbound insights, where we're sending Queenslanders out to hotspots around the world, whether that be through research or technology. The entrepreneurial partnerships, this is where we're placing entrepreneurs overseas to commercialise their ideas further, and the collaborative R&D partnerships. So some of the things that we're looking at is some joint investment with some leading global research institutes out of Asia and the US at the moment. But yeah, watch this space. There'll be some interesting things coming out of there, particularly for universities. Knowledge transfer partnerships. There are some already coming out of CQU at the moment. So what we do with this one is it's $50,000 to the business and a management fee to the university to place a graduate into a business. Oh, really? Didn't think I'd take that on. Sorry. So we've already got 21 funded organisations doing this. So the businesses are actually employing graduates into their business to help them to innovate. So where it all fits, this is just a quick chart that, not sanctioned by government, I pulled this together. So it basically talks about the black in the middle is the commercialisation sort of pipeline, essentially. So taking you from ideation right through to growth. So this is how our programs in the orange fit across those, the commercialisation timeframe, right through from fellowships right through to the BDF, as we call it, the Business Development Fund. And that's it from me. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, what's an angel investor?
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I've got angel investor. They're early stage investors into a business or a piece of research. Usually they come in at that lower end, from $50,000 up to $1 million is around about their investment sort of range. And then you move into venture capital funding after that, when you hit the growth phase.
Are angels usually philanthropists or small companies, or
They are not philanthropists. No, they're individual high net worth, and they are in it to make money, but to also to help the business grow. So generally their investment is driven by an interest in actually seeing something succeed, but also they want something out of it at the end, because then when they exit usually at the venture capital stage, they exit out with their investment and their return on that investment, and then they will reinvest that into the next business to help them grow to that stage. Okay, thank you.
Kylie was much quicker than I was expecting. It was to give you 5 minutes, Kylie. You still had a bit of time there. This is just a thank you from us, Kylie, so thank you for that presentation. I have to say, as a scientist, accelerators and incubators mean something a little bit different to me, but it was really fantastic to see the breadth of funding and support from the Queensland Government for innovation in Queensland. I'm really delighted to be able to introduce our next keynote speaker, Mr. Jack Archer. Jack is the CEO of the Regional Australia Institute. He is an alumnus of one of our run partners, UNE, where he was awarded a first-class honours degree in Natural Resource Management. He holds a Masters in Business from ANU, and he is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Jack has held both consultancy and public service roles, where he's contributed to major regional reforms in water, climate change, Indigenous issues and industry. So he kept it pretty easy by the sounds of it, Jack. Today he's going to share with us the Institute's latest data on the future growth prospects for regions around the country and the role of innovation and skills in enabling the next regional transition. So please join me in welcoming Jack. Reduce it a little bit. I'll give you maybe about sort of a couple of minutes to go, so that'll help.
Shall we? Some questions here. Morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I've got a few slides. I should say they said I had a master's from the ANU. I don't. It was rubbish, so I stopped. But I do have a great degree from UNE. And all of the other stuff's true. But I think in a room of researchers, it's not good to be given things that you don't really have. So thanks for the chance to come and speak today. What I thought I'd do, given the other keynotes, is focus a bit more on the work we've done recently on innovation. It's just been released, and we're taking a bit of a different spin to the really interesting presentation we've heard today, and I think one you'll hear tomorrow as well, looking at the fundamentals of what's happening with our innovation system in regional Australia and trying to get a better handle on this revolution that it seems we're all trying to make happen right now. Before I get into that, though, I'll share a few things, a few overriding thoughts. I've been with the Institute now for 3 or 4 years, working on this, and look, I think just some of my simple summary thoughts. I've pulled back on some of the data stuff, though. I know these presentations can be very dense if you get right into the middle of that. So a little bit about regional futures. Our latest assessment of the regional innovation capacity. I'm really going to focus on the local government areas around the core campuses for the regional universities network. I thought that'd be a good way just to check in with probably the places many of you work and how they're faring in innovation, and touch on some policy issues in regional universities at the future. Hopefully I'll leave a good amount of time for some questions and discussion, because I think it'd be good to get your thoughts on the work and other issues as we go through. So regional economic futures. We have a bit of a different view. We often see what we call in the Institute rogue statements in government documents and other things. So the most recent example is the Smart Cities Plan, where it basically made a blanket statement about most regional cities are experiencing low or negative growth. It's not true. There's some specific cities right now experiencing low or negative growth. We're in one now. Mackay is also having a difficult time. So the cities which benefited most from the mining boom here in northern Queensland and northern Australia are the ones certainly going through a transition. But overall, when we've looked at economic data, we've looked at modelling for regional Australia, most regions do fairly well. Over the medium term, the longer term, regions are growing pretty strongly. They're generally lagging the cities in terms of growth, although within regions and different local areas are far outperforming the city's level of growth. Some regions have low growth potential, and that's just a factor of their industrial structure, their workforce, these sorts of things. And that's part of every economy. Some parts of the cities have very low growth potential as well. Some are heavily exposed to commodity markets, and I don't have to tell people in central Queensland about that, and the weather as well. And really that means we're riding the lightning. So we have a limited ability to stabilise things. We do well when markets are on. It's more challenging when markets are not. And most of our rural and mining regions in some ways fall into that, but not our regional cities, I must say. We're in a real adjustment period in this part of the world, and as much as politicians might like to tell you that they're running the economy and they're going to sort all that out for us, they can't. The amount of investment and the boom that's gone in here with the turnaround in coal prices and other things means that inevitably we're going to see lower population growth. We're going to see some parts of this region with some negative population growth figures as the jobs contract back. This is just part of the challenge of adjustment in economies, something that I think many of us could see coming, but it's still a difficult period, but I think it will abate over time. I think one of the biggest issues we've got in regions, particularly our coastal regions, is we're heavily constrained by participation and human capital. And that's why I think the work of regional universities, particularly in not being those elitist institutions, as Scott talked about this morning, but picking up and engaging people who aren't at that perfectly elite level but have great potential to contribute is so important. Participation in many of our coastal areas is very poor, and human capital rates, the sort of inherent potential of the workforce there is also quite challenging. So that's one of the biggest constraints we see. So after 4 years, these are the four things that I think really matter when you're talking about regional economic development. Now, I know there'll be a lot of researchers in the room who are working on social and environmental issues. I'm speaking about economic development specifically here. What's not on there is infrastructure. So I get really frustrated by our inevitable focus. I call it concrete fever. The idea that if we just keep concreting things, somehow the economy will be fine. It's a stimulus plan that doesn't work, and it's not the answer to the fundamental issues we've got in regional development. Infrastructure is an important enabler. It can be a constraint on growth. We can unlock potential of regions with smart infrastructure investment, but it is not a panacea, and for me it's not even one of the top four. We should think about whether we need it when we're looking at some of these bigger issues for me. Cities is one of our top priorities, so regional cities, places like Rockhampton, Mackay, Townsville. The research we've done recently, 31 regional cities around Australia, 4 million people live in those places. The research we've done, mirroring some stuff overseas, says once you reach the sort of 50,000 mark, you can start to get some of those agglomeration economies happening. Your economy is diverse, your employment base is diverse. So the growth, specialisation and connectedness of our regional cities, we think is fundamental to regional development as a whole. I think one of the things that, because these centres have grown relatively recently to be cities, we've always thought of them as regional service centres. So we've always thought of them as dependent on the economy around them. And really the challenge was to develop the primary economy around these places, and these places would then do well. I think there's a number of things challenging that. I think firstly is the rise of cities globally and how important they are in our knowledge economy. I think secondly, the role of these places as regional centres that just naturally benefit from the growth in industries around them is very much challenged. So as retail centres, online shopping means that you don't need to come to Rockhampton. Extra mobility means that people go to Brisbane much more often. Services, materials, things are being brought in from outside. So that competitive advantage for benefiting from the region's growth that our cities have always had is being undermined. But on the other side, their potential to access broader markets, to build specialisations, to grow and become connected, I think is growing strongly. But it's going to take some deliberate effort for these places to reach their potential. We've been talking about innovation for a while. We've been trialling an accelerator program. I think it's a fundamental thing when we look at policy in Canberra and we look at the old style approach, what I'd call old style now, of deregulation, competition, privatisation policy, the things that we've really relied on for the last 30 years to drive growth and change in our economy, they've run out of steam. And I think that's why you're seeing our politics grappling so much. They really don't have the answers that we need. We also don't have these overwhelming macro factors coming to save us anymore. So I think the housing boom, the credit boom earlier, and then the mining boom, which really helped drive our economy along, that stuff's gone. I think we need to rely on innovation. Our view on innovation, though, is it's not about doubling down on our research and development focus. So as we know and as we've heard today, innovation has changed. It's not about R&D, it's not about invention so much anymore. It's about translation of technology. I wonder if we shouldn't just focus on becoming the best at taking inventions from overseas and commercialising them, making them work. You know, and I think at the one hand, universities, regional universities, can see that sort of proposition as a threat because obviously research is your core business. But a lot of the great research I see regional universities doing is applied research, is taking ideas, taking technologies and putting them into practice. And I think it's that stuff better connected. But our entrepreneurial and commercial innovation, I think, has to be the absolute focus. It's great to see the range of things that policies like Advanced Queensland are doing to really try and lift up the level of activity. The role of government here is to lift up the level of activity. So government can't work out which startups or who's got the next big idea that's going to turn into $1 billion winner. What they can do is really lift up the level of activity, the number of people having a crack, the number of people with access to great networks, the number of people who are likely to be successful. That's how policy can increase the chance that our innovation economy will grow and prosper and attract people and deliver. It can't be this tightly focused industry policy we've tried to run, which is very much we're going to sort through and identify the companies that are going to do well and try and focus on them. So a broad-based approach to innovation I think is really important. The third one's investment, mostly private and mostly international. Now, the Australian economy runs on international investment one way or another, and I think for too long in regions we've been too wary. I think we need to back ourselves to make good deals in this space, to work out how to bring capital from overseas into our businesses and do better. I think the over-reliance on pressuring governments for investment is going to be pretty fruitless. If the case is there for infrastructure investment, it can be made and it can be got. But more broadly, I think private investment, domestic or international, is fundamental for our regional development. And the last one's migration. Targeted, successful and more international. We'll be releasing some work shortly which in a pretty simple way shows that the reason regional Australia aggregate population growth rates are lower than metro areas is just international migration. So we have quite a population balance. We have this idea in Australia that everyone's moving to the cities. When you actually go through the numbers, it's pretty much in balance. We lose young people from regional areas who at the end of schooling or perhaps the end of university go to the cities or go overseas to seek out new opportunities. They come back either as working age people with families or as retirees. And so that's largely in balance. Now, it does mean that regions are younger and older, so that working age population is higher in the cities, and that's a structural issue. But what we don't do in regions is get anywhere near the proportion of migrants. So about 30% of people live in regional areas. We only get about 20% of international migrants. And that creates the difference between our growth rates. We've also seen those areas in regions which are struggling for population, inland rural communities. The only real success stories I've seen in those places are related to targeted, locally led international migration programs and communities who've grown their population by 10, 15%. So our argument, which you'll see shortly, is, we've always put this option last. If we can't identify workers locally, if we can't bring workers in from other parts of Australia, then we might consider international migration. Our argument is we need to flip that. International migration is 50% of Australia's population growth. Why isn't it 50% of regional Australia's population growth? Now, everything else, there's a lot of stuff around services and other things which we'll talk about, but which is important, health and education, all of these issues. But if we're talking about headline economic performance, these are the areas that I've come to as the ones we need to focus on in regions. So I just wanted to dig in a bit on innovation. So this is some work we released a couple of weeks ago. It was done with the support of Bendigo Bank, which is wonderful to have that partnership for the Institute. What we're trying to do with this work is through our insight Index, which is a competitiveness index with data on regions. It's all available on regionalaustralia.org.au. You can browse it, and for a small subscription, download the data and use it if you don't have it already. What we wanted to do with innovation is I guess, looking at the way we measure innovation in Australia, it's been very poor. That's partly because it's very hard to measure. So a lot of the innovative activity just isn't captured anywhere in any survey or anything we normally do. But it's also been very focused on research and development. So I think one of the reasons we haven't got this other side right yet is because our measures are very focused on research and development, investment in research and development, and we heard from the Chief Scientist earlier that we're not good at then taking that to commercialisation. At the same time, innovation's been democratised, and so using technology, the ability to innovate, not as a technology company, but just in general, as a services company, as an agribusiness company, has really changed. And so your need for that core basic technical research, which perhaps was much stronger in the 50s and 60s, is lower now, although it can still be really important. So what we've done with the new Insight Index is we've split it into two: R&D and science, which looks at research and development managers and scientists, people like yourselves, your presence in communities, the presence of research and development organisations and people with science degrees. So we've got a few measures there which are the best nationally.